I'd like to thank Pav for 14 great seasons, 950 games and a little over 900 points. Helped us win the Stanley Cup in 02 and 08. Brought people out of their seats. One of the best two-way players in the league during his time. Great leader, great role model. Certainly Pav gave us, he was a wonderful player for a long time. So I'd like to thank Pav for his time in a Red Wing uniform. You know, how we got here today is, when we started to negotiate this current 3-year deal, Gary Greenstein, his agent at the time, sat down. Gary told me that Pav wanted to retire a Red Wing, wanted to do a 5-year deal. I was uncomfortable with a 5-year deal. We sort of went back and forth a little bit. I ended up meeting with Pav. Pav wanted to know what term I felt was fair. I said a 3-year deal. Pav agreed. Pav called Gary Greenstein. Within a day or two, we did the deal that we got done. And then in the first year of that deal, about September of October, Pav told me that was his last year in the National Hockey League. That is, he wanted to go home, and for all the reasons that you heard today. And then I spent basically the rest of the 14-15 season explaining to Pav, and he dropped Gary Greenstein and hired Dan Milstein, explaining to them that the current CBA and the difficult position we were going to be in, and that went into last summer. We lost to Tampa Bay in 7 games. I spent a number of meetings with Dan Milstein, with Pavel Datsyuk, and my concern was that Pav was either going to retire and leave us in a difficult situation with 2 years to go on his contract, or that he would try to go back to the KHL anyways, and we would have to try to do everything we could to stop it. So I reached out to Dan Milstein and Pav and said, I'll work with you. I'll give you the best deal that I can. You honor the 15-16 season, and if you decide you want to go home for the 16-17 season, we'll deal with the situation. That's where we are today. And then I guess lastly to your question, I've talked to some teams here over the last couple of days. We'll see if I can move the contract. I'm not overly optimistic. Teams obviously are looking for lots of future assets, and I understand that there's a price to be paid to try to free up the cap space. But if it's going to be one of our top young players or a high draft pick, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. So I'll continue to work the phones, and if we can find a deal that makes sense for a team to acquire his cap space and it makes sense for us, we'll do a deal. If not, we'll work the best that we can with Pav on our contract, on our cap space. I'm open for questions.
How limited is the trade market for that? It seems like there's a few teams that would be.
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be limited, because many teams want to go to the cap, trying to win. I think at the same time, it's what I've just said. I mean, people are looking for assets, and we have to determine if how much future you pay. So we'll see.
Ken, is the price even higher than when you told us the price was probably going to be high in April? You know what I mean? Is the market even a little steeper, do you think, given the Teravainen thing?
Well, I'm not. You're more worried about that than I am. I think from my perspective, there's a price I'll pay. Mm-hmm. And then if the price gets too, if I want to buy my house or my car, there's a price you can pay, there's a price you can afford to pay, and if the price just gets unrealistic, what do? Yeah. You don't go buy the house, you don't go buy the car. And I think it's the same thing. Part of where we're going is lots of young people. And the beauty of young people is some of them on our entry-level contracts. They don't, we went through it. I'm sitting with our pro scouts right now over the last 3 days, and we've gone through it. If Pav's on our cap, and we think we can put a team on it's going to be young. We think it's going to be competitive, but certainly you're going to be compromised by having $7.5 million tied up in a player that you don't have. This is a huge loss. It's a huge hole, and it's a very, very difficult situation. But we're gonna, I tried to manage this the best I could to get Pav on on our team for the 15-16 season. And now I'll deal with the decision that Pav made today, the best that I can. So, it takes two to make a deal. And like I said, I've been talking to a small group of teams that have expressed some interest. They're trying to determine on their side, whether it makes sense to acquire the cap space. But part of making sense is what price are we prepared to pay, and we're the same on our side. So, I'm anticipating this is going to take here. Obviously, if we don't get it moved before July the 1st, obviously the intent would be to do something so that you free up cap space once you get to July the 6th or 7th or 8th, and the free agent market has come and gone. It doesn't make any sense. So certainly there's a small period of time here where I'm going to work the phones, and other people are going to, again, they're going to see if it makes sense on their end. I have to see if it makes sense on our end.
Can the
looking back,
options
just
expand if you're willing to take a little bit of a contract in return, like a $2 million?
Those are all things that were options, yeah.
Just looking back at the contract, obviously you don't know at the time because you expect Datsyuk to fulfill the contract, but you didn't sign him year to year because you probably don't want to give him an opportunity to go to another team, correct? Because at the time you're just thinking he's going to play the 3 years, right?
Wouldn't you? Good question. Starr is our best player. I mean, you start to try to sign Starr. I mean, his agent walked in and wanted to negotiate a 5-year deal. What do you think would have happened if I had countered with a 1-year deal?
Do you feel
He would have been in another team. So, I mean, I don't think as we sit here today, and everybody can, hindsight's 20/20. I don't think Pav knew the rules. I don't think Pav had a conversation with Gary Greenston about when he wanted to retire. I don't think Gary Greenston got into a negotiation with me and was talking about a 5-year contract, and his client is telling him he's year to year, and Gary knows the rules. I just think that I'm not even Pav. I don't think Pav made this decision knowing the rules. I don't think he had a conversation. I think that Pav signed the contract. He wanted to be here, and when he got into the start of the first year, for the reasons that you heard today, he made a decision that he didn't want to be in the National Hockey League anymore. He wanted to go back home. He then met with me one-on-one in my office, came and sat down, and I listened to him. As soon as he walked out, I knew the rules. I went down and talked with Ryan Martin, and I said, let's just give this a little time. Maybe I'm hoping Pav is going to change his mind. And about a month or two later, Pav came to me and said that he had kept it quiet, but that he had told Henrik Zetterberg, who was his best friend and the captain of the team, and he thought, and that was that point in time. It was about, I don't know, December or January that I started to engage with Gary Greenston. Shortly after that, Pav made a decision that he didn't want Gary Greenston to represent him anymore. And then there was a bit of a period of time when Pav didn't have an agent, and then Pav had Dan Milstein, who at the time was a real good friend, is now in the agent business, representing him on his behalf. And then I had to kind of walk them through. I know they talked to the NHLPA. They hired an independent lawyer. They did some things from their perspective, thinking that Pav was concerned about the Detroit Red Wings. Pav's a real honor boy. Pav didn't do this knowingly. Certainly, I'm disappointed that he's not going to honor the 16-17 season. But I've spent 18 months talking to him and Dan Milstein, and I understand the reasons why. His heart isn't here anymore. And again, it's like I said, I tried to manage the situation the best I could. I got him to, we went up to Mr. and Mrs. Illich's house last year in about early June, and basically, we laid out that honor, come play the 15-16 season, and if your heart isn't in it for 16-17, we'll deal with the situation. And number one, we wanted to get him in a lineup for 15-16, and number two, we were hoping that when he played 15-16, that he'd want to play 16-17. And certainly, I didn't talk a lot with Dan Milstein and Pav in January, February, and March, and obviously the story came out the last day of the season with Mitch Albom. you know, and obviously, given everything that transpired the previous year, 14, 15, 16 months, and knowing Pav and knowing all the conversations, how important it is for him to go back to Russia, that this was coming. But I guess I would say to you, you know, looking back at the time, you know, he's a star player. He's 35 years of age. The agent felt at the time, Gary, that Pav wanted to retire. It was important for Pav to retire a Red Wing, and I talked about how Chelios did one-year deal at the end, and how Lidstrom did a couple of one-year deals, and the Yzerman did one-year deals, and I said, let's do a 3-year deal, and if you want to play here till you're 41 or 42, we can keep doing one-year deals. I said, you've kind of seen my managing style, so you know, fortunately, we didn't sign a 5-year deal. We'd have a bigger problem on our hands.
So you don't feel at all burned by this?
No, I think when you manage Wojo, to the best that I can't have emotions involved. You know, because I don't know that you make good decisions when you're emotionally. Am I disappointed that he hasn't honored his contract? Yeah, but I'm going to premise that with, you know, I understand you know, it's been a process last summer to try to get him to play the 15-16 season, and basically, obviously, I mean, if he chose to retire last year, nothing we can do. He can just go retire. But certainly, if he wants to, you know, continue his career playing retire in the NHL and play his career in the KHL, I think he sort of wanted our blessing. And you know, again, so do I feel burned? Not. I can't let that emotion come into where we are. We got to figure out a way here now over the next 3 months to put the best product that we can on the ice.
Whether
So
or
you're
not
okay
you
with
trade
it?
the salary cap, is it somewhat contingent on if you know you can get one of the big free agents? Like, you don't want that salary cap space if you don't think you can get somebody, correct?
I would answer. The answer to that is almost impossible because of a sequence. One of the words that I use in the coaches' room at times over the winter, or there's a sequence of events. Sometimes when you make decisions, there's a sequence of events that have to happen, and the decision sort of plays itself out for you. And I think, you know, if I had a crystal ball and I could see over the next month everything that goes on in the hockey world, that would obviously allow me to make the right decision. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. I don't know what's going to happen. So all I can do is try to make the best decisions that I can based upon the information that I've got between now and July the 1st. And then whenever we make all those, whatever decisions that happen from July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 4th on, make decisions based upon whatever decision we've made prior to July the 1st. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know who's going to be free. I don't know what it's going to cost. Ideally, would we like to have the cap space? If there was a price, if there was a futures price that we could live with, yeah, absolutely. We'd like to have, and at least have the flexibility to explore. And even if you pay a bit of a price and you wake up and you don't get as involved as you'd like to for whatever reason, you still would like to have that flexibility. So I'm prepared to pay a price between now and July the 1st. Now I got to continue to talk to teams that have expressed some interest.
Can you make a contingent deal? Whereas, like, I'll give you X futures if Y happens, and I'll give you Y futures if
On who?
Z happens.
On who?
So say you trade the cap.
Yeah.
Hit.
Yeah.
And say I'll give you this asset if we do this in free agency, and if I'll give you this asset if we do this in free agency. Is that possible to do?
Well, I don't think. Unfortunately, there's 30 teams competing.
I'm just asking.
Nobody wants to do us any favors. Nobody wants to do anybody any favors. I mean, that's the beauty of professional sports. I mean, I guess the answer to your question would be you can do it. You can negotiate anything you want within the realm of the CBA. You know, what you're talking about basically is probably conditional draft picks. You can't do conditional players. You know, I mean, you'd have to do conditional, you know.
Future considerations?
Well, they'd have to be conditional draft picks. You can't do, you'd have to be
Oh.
conditional draft picks.
Well, you could do that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like if we spend X amount of dollars, or we sign so-and-so, you get, like if we get a really good free agent, you get a first-round pick.
I've never heard of it. I can't say no to anything, but I've never heard of it.
Ken, if
I
you.
mean, I've heard of, you know, I've done where, you know, if you trade player and we go to the third
Yeah.
round of the playoffs, the second round pick becomes a first round pick. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I don't know that I don't even know if it's legal under the CBA to tell you if we spend X amount of dollars and we spend this amount of money that goes from this pick to that pick. I don't even believe that's legal. I'd have to check, but those aren't conversations that I'm engaged in. I don't really see it being something that anybody else would want to engage in. Seems awful complicated to me that they don't have any.
Well, if you have a pool of targets, I guess is what I'm saying, you have plan A, B, and C. If you get one of those, you're willing to give up a first-round pick. I can't ask
Yeah, I
the
know, but
question because you won't answer
yeah,
it.
well,
If I give names.
but what ends up happening is anybody that acquires $7.5 million cap space, and not all 29 teams, but some of them might be compromising their position a little bit, but they're prepared to compromise their position if they know that they've got
Yeah, no, I understand.
guaranteed future assets or
Yeah.
you're doing, as Helene would say, you're exchanging players and they're moving contracts around. So, you know, I don't know that anybody wants to know that, boy, Detroit had a great July 1st and now we're gonna kind of, you know, they're compromising. This is $7.5 million of cap space. It's a significant amount of cap space. And even if you just go to the floor, I mean, there's only about 15, 16 between the floor and the ceiling. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to do the best that I can, and someone else is going to do the best that they can, and we'll see if we can find a solution.
Just
Yeah,
wondering
if
if you
you
can
can-
confirm, Milstein said that there was a $2 million bonus he was due in February contingent on him playing the third year of the contract. And he did not take the $2 million.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
A,
It-
accurate.
yeah, yeah.
B, did you structure that way so that there's a carrot for him to come back and you'd have some
No.
warning if you didn't?
Basically, what ended up happening was when I talked to Pav, you know, the deal was, I mean, at the time, Henrik Zetterberg had 3 years to go at 7.5. I said, Pav, I see you and Henrik exactly the same. Z has 3 years to go at 7.5. And Pav said, done. He said, I'll call Gary tomorrow. And then Gary and I talked, and Gary wanted some signing bonus, wanted to front some money. We structured the contract as is. I think at the time, everybody was expecting he was going to play certainly Gary expected he was going to play 3 years, and I expected he was going to play 3 years. It wasn't structured for any other reason than that was the way to come to put the deal to bed.
Okay.
And then, but we put in language in the contract, you know, and we put language in all our contracts when there's signing bonus that, you know, you have to honor, and there's language in the contract. We've gone to the league that's, you know, I went to Dan Milstein in February the 15th or prior to, actually a year earlier. He had a $2 million signing bonus, I think, in March. We didn't pay, but when he told us in June he was coming back, we immediately paid it. You know, to Pav, I guess, number one, to Pav's credit, he's not looking for it, and number two, there's language in the contract that if he doesn't play this year, even if we had paid it to him, we could go after, and we were entitled to get it back. So to make things smoother, we didn't pay it to him, and we said, Pav, if you play the 16-17 season, as soon as you give us word, we'll pay you the $2 million. So, but from our perspective, from the club's perspective, we know we're entitled to get that money back because when we negotiated the contract, anytime we've got signing bonus, we put language in that if you don't honor the full contract, we've got the ability to come back and get future signing bonus money from you.
Are you
Can I-
okay with him playing in the KHL next year?
I'm okay. He can do whatever he wants to do. I mean, I'm happy he gave us 14 great years. I'm happy that he gave us the 15-16 season. Heart's not in Detroit. His heart's not in the National Hockey League. So I'm trying to manage the situation the best I can.
Ken, if you don't move this deal, how much does that tie your hands to do anything this offseason? I mean, that, like you said, that's a significant hit. You have to do trades. You have to. How creative can you be when you have $7.5 million that you're on the hook for and no player?
Well, I think creative obviously is trades, right?
I would assume so, but I'm asking you. I mean, can you do anything if you cannot move this contract?
Well, you can do lots if you want to do trades. right?
Right, but you also need, like you said, you need.
Well, I think I had said here, certainly when you've got $7.5 million of cap space tied up in a player that he's not on your team, it'd be like Pav's here in game one, you've lost him for the year, so you lose the player. I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? Whether I know in the summer and I've got the 7.5 and I can't do anything, or it's like going to training camp and that player is done for the year. You've got $7.5 million, and even if you can say you can put an injured player in LTI, what's LTI if everybody's signed and there's no money? So, we're going to do the best. There's teams that are going to be below where we are. It's not like we're going to be the lowest payroll team in the National Hockey League. Are we going to be compromised? Absolutely. Is it going to affect some of the things that we can do? Absolutely. You'd be dreaming if you think that having a $7.5 million cap hit on our cap space has no effect on our ability to do business. I mean, so I think the question you answered is the answer is fairly simple. Of course you're going to be compromised. Of course it's going to affect. It's a huge loss. It's a huge hole. It's a really a difficult situation. I'm going to try to manage it the very best that I can, that we can.
If you don't move it by the July 8th, 9th, or 10th, then you're just going to eat it then? Do you think?
Well, I think realistically, if you don't move it by July the 1st,
you're on the hook.
well, you're looking for specific. I don't know. What if free agents sit out there till July the 10th?
Right.
What if they all go on July the 1st? Like, you're asking me to have answers all encompassing. I don't have. I'm only one piece of an industry that's moving, moving around. So, all these things that you're asking me, they're related to other things and other decisions that other people are going to make in the industry. All I'm telling you is that we're in a tough spot, but I'd rather be in a tough spot with Pav gone for 1 year than if he would have left last year, and we'd have been having this conversation a year ago with him having 2 years to go on his contract and 2 years of cap space. So I tried we got him to play the 15-16 season, knowing that this was a possibility, hoping that he would want to come back and play the 16-17 season and honor his contract, but it didn't happen. So here we are.
And if their asking prices includes Mansa, is that a hard no?
Any of our top kids are a hard no. Doesn't make any sense. Why would I trade 10 and 12-year players to free up cap space for 1 year? Doesn't make any sense.
If the ankle injury hadn't happened a year ago, do you think you'd be more inclined to stick around for another year?
I mean, I wasn't up there to talk to Pav today. I would say, Drew, that I should have looked. I'm not sure exactly when we signed this 3-year contract, but I do know in September of 14, it was the first year of this contract. It was the first week of training camp. I was in Traverse City, and I was getting a tea, and Pav said to me, "Ken, when we go back to Detroit, I'd like to come to your office and meet with you." I said, "Sure." We got back here for the preseason games, and Pav came in my office, and he told me, "Ken, this is my last year." I mean, we were a week into the contract. So that's, I just listened. My hope was that Pav was going to leave that meeting. We were going to start playing. Pav had just spent all summer at home, and my hope was that Pav was going to kind of get excited about the National Hockey League and the Detroit Red Wings and be excited with the year. And then, again, I can't remember I don't know if it's November, but 2-3 months later, Pav, as I'm walking around, Pav pulls me aside and says, "Ken, just so you know, I haven't told anybody about my decision of this being my last year, but I did tell Henrik Zetterberg today." That's when I knew that this wasn't going away. So at that point in time, I reached out to Gary Greenston. I talked to Gary a little bit. So I would say to you, Drew, I don't think the ankle. Did the ankle have, even when we met in early June, Dan Milstein, Pavel Datsyuk, Mr. and Miss Illich, and myself.
This past year, or a
A
year
year ago, June of 15, a year ago, and in that I had already reached out to Dan and said, Dan was telling me Pav was dead set on going home, and he didn't want to be here anymore. And they knew that we'd spent 6 months. I'd walked them through. They like I said, they had talked to the union. They'd hired an independent lawyer. They were trying to figure out ways that they wanted to get us out of the cap. I think Pav wasn't trying to get out, trying to get the money. Pav was he wanted to make sure that the cap hit wasn't against the Detroit Red Wings. So basically, from a timing standpoint, when we were at the Illich's house, basically we left there with ownership and with the general manager saying to Pav, we want you back. If we want you to play 15, 16, and if your heart's not in it for 16, 17, we'll deal with it. And so I would say to you, shortly thereafter, Dan Milstein informed me that Pav was going to honor his contract, and then shortly thereafter, Pav had called our trainers and said, my ankle's not getting any better. So the sequence of events, I don't know if that...
To clarify,
Yeah.
though, you said earlier in this that you don't hold a grudge against Pat.
Yeah.
Do you hold a grudge against his previous agents?
Gary Grinston?
Yeah. For not letting him know everything involved with someone 35 or older signing that type of contract and knowing what the ramifications would be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Drew,
Do you hold a grudge?
no, I don't. Ask me in January. Let's see. I want us to. Nah, I'm just. You know what?
Well-
I would say to you, I really believe. Gary Greenston at the time told me that he really believed Pav wanted to retire a Red Wing, and he wanted to do a 5-year contract and set on the open, blah 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 blah, and there's KHL's this and KHL that, and so I don't know. Obviously, Gary and Pav never had that conversation. Do I hold about the 35-year-old? And how long do you want to be? So do I hold a grudge? I don't know. And even if I did hold a grudge, what good would it do? I mean, it doesn't do. I guess for me, I want to think about the 950 games. I want to think about the 2 Stanley Cups. I want to think about the role model, about bringing people out of their seats. And I think you're more from the agent, but that agent really represented the player. He was such a
But he
great
basically
player.
screwed you guys, though. That's the case.
Yeah, but I don't know that he intentionally screwed. I think that his heart isn't in anymore. I mean, certainly Brian Rafalski left when his heart wasn't in anymore. No, Brian was
Not
different.
Pav. I'm not talking about
Yeah,
Pav. I'm
yeah,
talking about his
yeah,
agent.
yeah.
Screwing you guys.
Yeah.
Doesn't that blow your mind though a little bit that it somehow wasn't relayed the Pav from the agent to the terms of when you're 35 and older?
I'm hoping to do deals with many agents going forward. And if every time I got into a deal with an agent and I felt like I got screwed and it didn't work out, I wouldn't be able to get any deals done. So I got to, back to Wojo, I got to hold those emotions inside me because I'm in this business and I've got to do deals with these people. And I don't believe that there was any. I mean, at the end of the day, Pav ain't even taking he's not taking the money. Like, we're not going to pay him the money. So what would be the incentive for them to know that we're going to be in cap problems? But they're not taking. Be one thing if he was entitled to all the money. Pav's going to sign. Pav understands whether he remains on the Red Wing roster or we trade him, that he's got to sign his voluntary retirement papers. I mean, I've walked Dan through that. I've walked Pav through that. That needs to be done so that whatever team he belongs to, he's not getting paid. I mean, if he doesn't sign those papers, it's like assigning a player to Grand Rapids or signing him. We're entitled to pay the player's salary. So we don't want to. So Pav understands that he's got to sign the voluntary retirement papers. Pav understands that a year ago, we met and we basically, I don't want to use the word blessed, but we negotiated. We being ownership and management negotiated the best settlement that we could, given that Pav's heart wasn't here anymore, given that Pav didn't want to be here anymore. With regards, certainly Dan Milstein come in after everything was done, to Drew with Gary Greenston. Gary's got lots of clients. Gary helped, bring Pav over in 2001. And the deal was, if he didn't make the team, he worked with us. He helped. We got a 7-year deal done, Gary and I. They're doing the best they can. I'm doing the best the best I can. I'm trying to manage the situation the best that I possibly can right now.
Ken, I think you might have answered this last remark about the signing the retirement papers, but by doing that,
He's done.
he's done for 1 year.
Minimum of 1 year, yeah.
Right.
And then there's other complicated things that need to, he understood. I mean, he was in my office on, I called him on a week ago Friday. He was on a holiday somewhere. I talked to him for about 45 minutes, to make sure that he understood that his NHL career in effect was going to be, his age, it's going to be over.
We're not gonna have Dominic Hasek revisit.
No, and then I went through it with Dan Milstein 2 or 3 times. I met him a couple of times. He lives about a mile from me. We've met a couple of times in Northville at Starbucks for coffee, and and then they were in my office after the funeral on Wednesday, and again we walked through it, and by the end of that meeting, it was obvious Pav was. He had made his decision long ago, and he wasn't going to change his decision. So Pav understands. He's very clear. He understands that the retirement papers, he's done for the 16-17 season. Whatever team's reserve list he remains on. Obviously, I guess if we don't trade him, then you got to file. Everyone's got a waiver. It's a process. He's done. Given his age, and I think he announced today he's retiring from the National Hockey League. I don't think Pav is looking back.
There was just some question about whether coming back late in the season after the KHL season for the NHL playoffs, but that's not even.
No.
That's no.
Because let's say we own him. Let's say we don't get him moved, and he goes to the KHL. We've got to do one of two things. Our options are one of two things. We either assign him to KHL, which means we're obligated to pay him this $7.5 million to play in the KHL, or he signs his retirement papers, which makes it that we don't have to pay him the $7.5 million. So, I mean, we're not going to pay Pav $7.5 million to play in the KHL and cross our fingers and toes that hopes that he wants to come back for the 17-18 season. I've spent 18 months talking to him and Dan Milstein. He's done here. He wants to go home.
Ken, you mentioned your hands tied somewhat with this, obviously. Do you, what is the rules? Do you still have buyout possibilities? Buyout players on your roster?
Other than Pav?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can buy out players until the end of June.
Is that a possibility?
I'm not sure. I mean, we're looking at all our options. I would say doubtful, but I wouldn't totally rule it out. We're looking at everything.
How does that work? Do you get a complete salary cap spot if you buy somebody else?
No, basically 2/3 of their. I'm gonna make it simple math. So let's say a player's making $3 million. It's got a year to go. 2/3 of that is a buyout over twice the term. So basically, you would pay him $1 million this year and $1 million next year. He'd be on your cap for $1 million this year. He'd be on your cap $1 million next year. Now it's a little more complicated if when a player gets front end loaded because they've got more money. So the cap. So the cap. Let's say that it's $3 million cash, but it's the player has a $4.5 million cap number and he's been front end loaded. But then it starts to jump up and down. It's not leveled, and somewhere in there it bounces for a year or two. So go to generalfanager.com.
Do I have to?
So knowing what you know,
or capfriendly.com. It's all in there.
Did you even try to convince him to come back, or did you know that it wasn't worth it?
Oh, they did lots. I mean, convinced them to come back for the 15-16 season. Now I'm not. I would say the 15-16 season was convinced because. Certainly. I said to Pav last summer, Pav, and Dan Milstein, Pav, if you're just going to leave, you can never stop a player from retiring. But if you think you're going to just go back home and play in the KHL for the 15-16 season, 16-17, we're going to do everything we can through the NHL to see if we can stop you from playing the KHL. And he didn't really want that, and obviously we wanted him in the lineup. So we convinced him to play the 15-16 season, but Dana, the understanding, I guess, was that if he came back for the 15-16 season and he didn't want to be here anymore, his heart was not here anymore, and he wanted to go home, we're going to let him go home. He gave us the 15. He honored his contract for the 15-16 season.
Was there a threat that the team made that if he didn't show up for the 15-16 season, you would take some type of action against him to honor his contract?
You can put it however you want. I mean, certainly whenever you think we've got rights. We thought we have rights, and we would exercise our rights. But in return for we negotiated, for lack of better words, because it can't be under the we said to him, if you honor your 15-16 season and you want to go home, we're not going to stop you. And if you want to go play in the KHL, he can get on with his life, and we're getting on. We're getting on. Yeah, and Pav was. I would say to you, Pav was. I think Pav was happy. I think Pav was happy to know that he had the green light to leave here today, and go home. So, I don't think he was held against his will or anything. I think that Pav understood if he left last year. I said, Pav, we got lots of young kids. We can, the Larkins, the Manthas, the Bertuzzi's, the Athanasius, the Mrazeks. We can use you for another year on the ice, but as a role model. And I think he give us one more year, hoping you want to stay for the 16-17 season. But if you decide you don't want to go, we're not going to exercise our rights. We're going to move on we're going to deal with the situation.
So going back a year ago, you guys brought Larkin up, and the perception was because Pavel wasn't able to play, you guys were going to do that anyway because you knew that Pavel wasn't coming back probably after the season.
For this year? True? I mean, for the 16-17 season?
Yeah. Past season.
Well,
You brought Larkin up. You brought Larkin up
Yeah.
for the start of the 15th season.
Yeah.
Knowing full well now that you knew that Pavel wasn't coming back, and it was spun to us that the reason why he was brought up because Pavel was recovering from the ankle injury. But bottom line is,
You must
guys-
think I'm a spin master.
Well,
No,
you-
I mean, the guy was. I mean,
It says on your
yeah,
little fan
Drew.
page, you're a spin master.
No, I would say to you. I mean, Dylan Larkin, when he left college. I'm going to go back on Dylan Larkin. I mean, I don't know if it's gone from Pav to Dylan, but I give you Dylan. I mean, Dylan was the CCHA Big Ten Rookie of the Year, and then played in the World Championships. When he went to Grand Rapids in a 6-game series in the Final Four against Utica, I'm not saying he was our best forward, but he was one of our best forwards. He was a 19-year-old kid. We went to training camp, and Jeff Blashill coached him. Jeff Blashill could see what he could do. Certainly what Dylan brought speed and skill. All I said to Jeff Blashill was, and I've said nothing different to Mike Babcock when it comes to young players. If you want them on the team, I'm okay with it as long as they're top 9 minutes and they're in the lineup every night. And the minute they're not top 9 minutes or you're healthy scratching them, I want to send those players to Grand Rapids where they can continue to play and be important. On opening day, Jeff Blashill put his roster together to give us the best chance to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Larkin was on that team. And if you remember, Larkin scored a goal that night. And so Larkin made the team. I mean, and then now, is it an added bonus that Dylan Larkin got to spend a year on the team with Pavel Datsyuk, who I consider a great pro, does it right, 200-foot player? Absolutely. That's part of the program that I've tried to build. That's why I kept Drapers and Osgoods and Maltbys and Nick Lidstrom, obviously, but Thomas. They were role models. They were good pros. Their game had diminished when they were in their high 30s, but they were role models. They were pros. And I'm trying to get the Red Wing way, whatever the Red Wing way is, that you've got to earn your ice time. You've got to take somebody's job. Those veteran players are important in here to kind of be the role models for the younger generation. That's what. But number one, I want a year. We're trying to go with the young. We're going to give Anthony Mantha every opportunity to make the Detroit Red Wings in training camp. We're going to give Athanasiou every opportunity to make the Detroit Red Wings. Dylan Larkin's on the Detroit Red Wings. You know, we're going to give Tyler Bertuzzi every opportunity to make the Detroit Red Wings. Pavel Datsyuk was a superstar. There are no superstars. We've got to that you can. There's very few, if any, superstars that change cities, other than via massive trade or the odd time on free agency. You gotta draft them, you gotta develop them, and so we're trying to draft and develop another generation of Red Wing players, so that we can be competitive. At this, and I'm going to go back to that same press conference. At the same time, we're trying to put a team on the ice that can compete with the other 7 teams in our division. Top 3 of the 8 make the playoffs. We want to compete for a playoff spot, but we're trying to move younger people. So Dylan Larkin was a great surprise for us. I didn't think that he, you know, when we drafted and watched him in Michigan, you know, you're never sure that a 19-year-old can make your team, but certainly he was on the team because he took one of the 9 spots.
Guys, we've only got the last question.
5
I
minutes.
was just gonna say, Pavel's agent told us today that he was positive you would be able to trade. He already thought maybe even you had a deal to trade the salary cap space. Is he just speaking
He's hoping.
on his own?
He'll feel better if it happens.
You really, that's all it is? He's just hoping he doesn't?
Well, he hasn't been in our room all week. I
No,
mean,
but
I
you're not
haven't,
asking.
I didn't, I looked down the table, he wasn't there.
You're not as hopeful?
I've been working the phones. I've been in the phones. I mean, I'm being facetious. I mean, he's hoping. I mean, I think Pav's hoping. Pav's hoping that we can. Dan Middlestein's hoping that we can free up the cap space. They're going to feel better, and I'll feel better, and Red Wing fans will feel better. But if somebody. If there's not a taker, if the price is what I would call significant in the sense of I got to trade a player that I think is going to play in the NHL for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, for a 1 year window of opportunity, and you might get to what you had said, to July the 1st, and all of a sudden between now and July the 1st, you know, lots of these players that are potentially free, they're going to re-sign with their teams. I mean, that's historically what happens. Certainly, we've got an unrestricted free agent in Darren Helm that I've talked to, and I'll reach out to again this week. So, you know, I think that I'm back to, again, I'm trying to manage this the best that I could. I had an idea a year ago that this was going to happen. I was hoping that Pav would have fun and decide that, you know what, I'm going to play the 16-17 season. But certainly, I knew if Pav decided to go home, that we were gonna wish him well, thank him for 950 great games and 14 great seasons, and going to try to manage this the very best that I can over the course of this summer.
If a trade doesn't happen in the next 2 weeks, what do you think the odds are then? Any move happening?
Well, 0, I think. I mean, I think realistically, if we don't trade him between now and July the 1st, I mean, you know, in order, I guess, Drew, I would say, you know, the very best free agents, whoever they might be on July the 1st, they're probably going to be gone by July the 2nd. You know, it's July the 3rd at the long end. So if this doesn't happen by July by the end of June, or, you know, free agency only begins at noon on July the 1st, or in the morning of July the. But I mean, if it happens in the morning of July the 1st, probably was in the works, you know, before that. But if we get to July the 5th or 6th or 7th, and Pav it's not going to make any sense. I mean, I probably won't. Wednesday, Thursday with the passing of Gordie Howe. You know, obviously Mark's our director of pro scouting. We pushed the meetings back after the visitation and funeral to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I've been hunkered down here from morning till night with our scouts and going through all this. So, you know, we talked. You know, I think that, you know, obviously if, you know, probably if Pav would have come back, we'd have tried to figure out a way to be together. But I think that, you know, from my perspective, I think that I don't have any hard feelings. I not towards Pav. He's a great player. He gave us 14 years of incredible hockey. He never complained. He just played hard. He's a 200-foot player. I'd like him back for another year. But at the end of the day, I understand why we're standing here, and I'll deal with it. I'm going to deal with it the very best that I can. But Pav gave us 14 great years, and I wish Pav was here and we could hug. I got things going on. He's got things going on. And I guess at the end, you guys had to put some miles on your car driving back and forth. I thank you guys all for kind of hitting there and hitting here. But I have no ill will whatsoever towards the Pavel Datsyuk camp. He was an incredible Red Wing. Thanks.